Hi, everybody, and welcome to Real Talk with Bob Tavi. Episode number 1. And for our first episode, which is very special to my heart, I would like to bring on my father, Bob Tavi, who has been an inspiration, the founder, the president, and my father of the company, and really set the pathway for success for the IBS family from 40 years ago to the present day. This will be a little tough of a podcast to me. It's the first time I'm really going to have a Q&A with my father, and I really want to share it with everybody out there. Also, our company and all our employees and our family, our customers and vendors, of really where we started from and where we are, and to really show the perspective of what's happened in the last 40 years, the succession that's come about, and the transition and expansion of our company through many, many challenges in the years before us. So once again, this is from my father. Happy Father's Day. I love you. Thank you, Dad. And we're live, Bob.
Hi, Sora.
Welcome to our First Real Talk podcast.
Thank you for
In our
inviting me.
IBS studios. How do you like it?
It's very nice. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Congratulations to you guys.
Well, thank you. This has a lot to do with your vision, and that's why the first one is dedicated in respect to you and as the founder, creator, and my father of IBS Electronics. That's why we're out to really understand how you started, where IBS came from, and how we've evolved here 40 years later.
That's good.
So, I mean, let's go back to the beginning. So how, when you as I said, as I'm first generation here, you immigrated to into the United States. What year?
It was in 1970.
1970, and then you did your college. You did college here. You went to college, university.
Yeah, actually, I went to high school here.
High school
for 1 year. Then I went to the college. Then I got my degree in electronics.
How did you get to electronics? What was sparking the interest of the electronics? I know you did engineering.
From the childhood, I was interested in electronics.
Yeah.
I always played around, bought technical books back home and try to assemble some type of drawing or things they had over there. Try and put it together. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
I think we have something in common because I think I was similar to that, taking things apart, putting it back together as a kid. So I can think that that really runs in the family. So you got into engineering, and then I think so you got to get your undergrad and your graduate school here in California, correct?
Yeah, I went to graduate school. I got my master's degree in international business. And then actually, when I was actually studying in the going through my bachelor's degree, I started looking for work. So I worked as a technician in local, it was the oak industry over here. They were assembling some light assembly. So I was working there actually part-time. Then I worked, after 2 years working there, I worked another company by the name of Symbolic Display.
So what kind of displays were they making? Back then, the technology wasn't what it is today.
The name of the company was Symbolic, but they were making actually display. They have a couple of products. One product was the strobe lights on jet planes and helicopters. Those lights that flashes.
Correct, yeah.
They were making those. And also they had some interesting, at that time, this thing was in 1970s. At that time, they had some new technology that they made this small computer that they put it on private plane that is actually calculated fuel of these planes. Privately, there is how much fuel they have, how much they can fly, how long they can fly. Like this, I don't know what it is in the car.
And that commercial base, and is this in the airline? So you're an engineer working for those, you're working as an engineer in
Actually, when I started working in electronics, I was working as a technician.
As a technician.
Yeah. Then as I got some experience and I finished my bachelor's degree, then I work as an engineer. And I went From symbolic display, I went to another company by name of Data Power.
That was, I mean, from remember, that was the power supply company, correct?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
where I got most of my experience. I was working there under one of the managers, engineering manager by name of Jerry Felper, and he actually teach me a lot.
Mhm. So he was kind of your mentor in that
Yeah,
way.
and I got involved like testing components, and also later on I got involved with safety, like working with UL Underwriters Laboratory,
Yeah.
and also with CSA, Canadian Safety Agency. So I got familiar mostly what is involved in power supply, from components to the safety and all the, at that time, just everybody was trying to make European standards, to make everything work with the safety standards of VDE, with the German standards, which was much, at that time, was much harder than passing underwriter UL
The US.
testing
So VDE
before.
was a much higher, basically a top
Yeah,
my grade than approval rating than the
yeah.
UL at that time.
So I got involved with that, and so I learned a lot over there. Especially Jerry, taught me a lot of things about how to test the components, how to see what is good or not. And I got involved with that company that he gave me assignment to assign part numbers to this factory for all the components they had, which was over like 6,000, 8,000 part numbers.
So you were creating internal part numbers,
Internal
part numbers for their bill of materials for the bill of materials that go into the builds.
And these
Okay.
things, and I got involved with that, with the production. And at one point, I remember I memorized all the part numbers. So anybody in factory, they didn't know what the part number was. They used to come to me, hi, what is the part number? I did. I would tell them right now, this is a part number.
So from from actually visually looking at the part, you would know the part number.
Yeah, I mean, they just show
which
me
is
the
very
part.
impressive.
Yeah,
It was very impressive.
It was like, remember, like 6,000, 7,000 part numbers.
Wow. I can see where your memory has always been so very sharp on that end.
Used to be good.
Yeah. So moving forward, I mean, how I know in 1980 when you founded IBS. So how did IBS Electronics? How did the formation and foundation start?
The idea came to me. I was working in data power. I was component engineer. So all the buyers, purchasing, and everything, and all the vendors or the manufacturers that they had components that they wanted data power to use in their products, they used to bring it to me to qualify it, if it qualifies or not. So I was involved with that. But after a while, everybody in the purchasing department had a problem, because they always came to me, oh, we cannot buy this part from this vendor. They don't give us credit. Can we find a substitute for us? So for anything that they wanted to lower the cost and find a substitution, I was involved with.
So from the sourcing side, the sourcing and purchasing
Purchasing, and so I was involved in all of it. Then it came to my idea, because these guys used to come to me every day. I have problem with that. Can we substitute this, substitute that? And so idea came to me. I said, why these guys are so, they don't notice it. They don't go after it, research it, find the suppliers and these things. So I came to idea that there is a need in a market for a company who specializes in components, knows what is what and find the sources. And especially that at that time, nobody at that time was sourcing actually parts in Asia. Everybody was using the
Domestic sources and
domestic sources and these things. So I got familiar with some Asian sources and like substitute capacitors that we were using, and we were buying it from expensive source, expensive manufacturing. So that way came idea to me that there's a need. So I said, okay, if you guys cannot find a partner every day coming to me, then I said maybe I should open a company
that can service this need.
Can service this need.
Yeah, the supply and demand. So they needed a supply. You can.
So I did that, and actually set up this company. We were buying the parts that.
But to go back to how when you set up IBS, I think everybody would like to know is what does IBS stand? How is IBS the name, the abbreviation, or IBS stands for? Where did that form?
Okay, that has a long.
That's a long story, and everybody always comes to us. What is IBS? There's a lot of different acronyms of what it can stand for, but as I said, from yourself,
this name came actually to me because at that time, because of VDE standard. For making the transformers which was used in every power supply, they had to meet VDE standard, and VDE had a standard that they have to have an 8 millimeter creepage between primary and secondary. So when they're winding a transformer, first they wind the primary and the secondary winding. Should have a gap with it.
So that's from winding a transformer is the coil that go over the magnetics, right? Or for the clip, right?
Yeah, which actually that clip that we made, they call it C-clip.
The C-clip. I remember that.
So actually, with one of my friends, we designed the C-clips and then also E-clips and a couple of things that we made it easy. So instead of taping the bobbin for that 8 millimeter gap, they use this clip in there. And they define the wiring on the transformer. So at that time, I said, okay, we're going to market this. I named a company. So at the beginning, this IBS came as International Bobbin System.
International Bobbin System. So that was the first one. Huh? Okay.
International Bobbin System was the first name. That was the idea. And that's where IBS came from. But of course, later on, change it to IBS Electronics.
So IBS at the formation was International Bobbin Systems.
Yeah.
So that's really what the name was then you just put electronics in front of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, as everybody could see, International Bobbin System, and that's because, as I said, I could take that back, came from a transformer, from winding a transformer, right? Winding a transformer. As an engineer, you came up with the name, and that's what, as being engineer, that's what was in your mind, and the IBS came from there. So that's, I think that story or that has been very rarely heard. I think you've told it a couple of times, but for even most of the staff that work at our company globally, I don't think they even know most of the stories. So it's good to, not many people know the secret behind the IBS Electronics. So when you started the company back in 1980, I would say that was actually the couple of years after I was born. You were started to found. So how did you put it together? How did you, how you formulate it? You brought family members, friends. How did the whole sales force work? How did you build from the beginning?
Actually, at the beginning, I didn't have that many. I had one staff, and I trained them. And because this data power was calling IBS, asking them, we want these parts. So I trained them to see if they want this part, where to go and buy it, and how much you pay. So I was training at the beginning. So I trained a couple of people.
On the sourcing aspect, you trained them how to source.
To buy
sourcing, okay.
And how much they sell it.
Okay. So the resale, the sourcing and the resale of the market. So from that, and then at that point when we were communicating, what type of, how did you communicate? I don't even fax was out there.
Oh, no.
What was back then?
Actually, this is another story, interesting story. At that time, there was no fax machine. And so I Well, at that time, the IBM computer, it was personal
Personal
computer,
computer, yeah.
yeah,
First.
was just started to the market, introduced to the market. So when I started the company, I started with IBM PC and running inventory, everything out of floppy disk, changing floppy disk, getting
Like
reports and
the
this
8
thing.
kilobytes, 16 kilobytes little
Yeah.
floppy disk. I remember. Oh, wow.
So I actually, that was kind of unique because everything before was everything on, they called it, we had this purchasing cart for every item.
Mhm.
So at that time, I kind of made this computerized.
So you revolutionized it using computing power
Yeah.
back in, I mean, early 80s. I mean, that was when the first computers came out. I mean, Apple, then IBM
Yeah,
were the
IBM,
first.
Apple,
Yeah.
and these things came out. So that's how I started computerized the company.
Mhm.
It worked out. I was reading like accounting, all of it. I mean, all with different software.
That's fantastic. So through the growth, so you kind of built for scale through computing, so be able to organize as the business grew, or as more transactions happen, as
Yeah.
inventory happens.
And this was so first communication we had with this was with telex.
And how does telex work?
Telex at that time, I was using this PC, and forgot exactly how it was, but they give us a Western Union or something. They give us a number, telex number,
Mhm.
which was through this number, people could send us the information, requirements, and the things. So we started with the telex first, studying communication actually, and at that time, luckily, I received the firm, and also at the same time, I was advertising in the. At that time, there was a magazine that was published in Asia by name of. Later became Asian Sources, but at the beginning was I think Electronic Sources or something.
So it was Electronics Register, a magazine, one of the few,
It's a
probably few back then. It was probably
but it
very
was international.
international. Okay.
So I was running ads in there
Mhm.
to get international customers.
Is that so how you started going to Asia?
Yeah.
Is that because that was one of the questions I had, is from that point. So that really can go into that stage, is how did you expand as
Yeah.
to Asia?
So I was very lucky, and we received through this telex. I received a first requirement for a very large company, which was National Semiconductor. At that time, they were making these cash registers.
The cash
That
POS,
product,
the POSs that we call them today,
yeah,
is
which
those
was
cash
actually at
registers.
that time was very unique because this was the first cash register. Yeah, actually, when they run a scan or run it, it would say, okay, this is $5, $6, and these things. And they were making this cash register over there in Hong Kong. And National Semiconductor, and we were making these cash registers. They had a very large purchasing department in Hong Kong. And that was my first major customer.
And what year was that?
Sure.
What year was that? Can you remember what year that was? Is that mid 80s, late 80s? When was that?
It was in the early 80s.
Early 80s. As I remember, as I was a kid, I remember because that's Hong Kong was somewhere that you always traveled to. I mean, I was just you were there for traveled probably many months of the year. You were traveling to Hong Kong.
And this
so that
national the semiconductors purchasing, they had many buyers. And these buyers, because over there, since it's a very dynamic working force in Hong Kong, nobody stays in one job for too many years. They don't stay. If they stay there for 2 years in one company, it's too long because they
a lot of rotation.
Yeah, because they want to always get more paid. So they went to next company, and these buyers over there, they got to know us, and they went to other companies and brought those other companies as a customer to us. So they went to work with other major companies, and since I was giving them good service, that I could find anything for them and also ship these parts to them on time. So all these customers add up to list of
And
our
that's the
customers.
the one thing in sales is referral
Yeah.
by reference or by people that like your service. And they always, as I said, people who like something like a service will always tell others. I mean, this is
That's a
yeah,
major thing.
major thing
You
that
have to give the customers good
service, so they remember you.
and
Of course.
service them. And also, and also one advantage we had, because China, Hong Kong was, they are like 16 hours ahead of us.
Yep.
So I was available when they was their working hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're working at night. You were working their hours.
Working until their hours, until early in the morning, to match their hours. And they like that. So any problem they had, they used to call me.
Any time of the night.
Any time of night. So that service they liked. I mean, right now that service is very
common. It's
common. About that at that time.
But back then we had no internet. We had no technology. But that was just when fax came about about that time, right? Fax was just coming about.
Yeah, fax came, and I bought the first fax machine for $8,000.
Oh, $8,000.
Yeah, fax with $8,000.
Today they give you can't they give them for free. They don't even know what to use them. Wow, I mean that's.
Yeah, and then everything was communication with the fax. Wow. It's amazing how technology changes so fast.
I mean, that's amazing. So, what challenges really did you face building? I mean, I know that through the years, expanding 80s to 90s, traveling to Asia. What are some of the things you've learned? Some of the challenges you faced, some of the things you overcame, and how you were so successful to keep that relationships with the Asian companies, and how IBS has been so successful.
I just was aggressive. I mean, they used those people in Hong Kong. They used to call me traveling. Say I had one Samsonite, and
traveling salesman. You were always a traveling salesman.
Yeah, and I walked into the companies that I just knew the name. I didn't know anybody over there, and I went introduce myself, and what can I do for them, and knock at the doors. Truly cold calls.
That's how true cold car door-to-door salesmen in another country where most of them people spoke English, but not everybody spoke English.
Yeah, not anybody.
And you were and you had they just know, as I said, that's the true salesman.
Yeah, that's why they were calling me traveling salesman. And also through this going back and forth in Asia, and I meet a lot of interesting people. I had Japanese friend that I find. His name was Unuma.
Mr. Numa, I remember. Yeah, Mr. Numa.
He was a nice guy. He helped me a lot, but unfortunately, he died of the cancer. But he was smoking a lot. Anyway, he taught me a lot of things. We used to do some business together, but mostly helping each other. So through these travels and this thing, I learn a lot. I get to know the people. I get to know the companies. And gradually, the company expanded. Actually, at that time, when I think of it, I could have expanded much more and be like this. But at that, it didn't. At that time, I wasn't. I didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a little bit of fear or conservatism because there's a risk. There's always a risk involved as well because you don't know, and that's the common nowadays. There's a ROI or fear. We all have that in us because it's a risk. Do we invest? Do we do this because we might lose? But it still takes the risk that you took to fly to another country, not knowing the language, going door to door.
Yeah, anytime I went to Asia, I stayed at least 1.5 months. So I went to many countries.
Yeah.
I started to Hong Kong and I end up like in India.
Yeah, I remember that's one thing's in India. You ended up in India.
Yeah.
So so you've gone through Southeast Asia. I mean, I remember, so you went from Hong Kong, and that's before China. I think China was a farm.
China over there was just starting. Because first of all the factories at that time, they were in Hong Kong.
The concrete jungle of Hong Kong factories.
And China, they started China step by step, and because of the cost and these things and the labor costs, a lot of factory from Hong Kong moved to China,
Mhm.
but they spend a lot of money to train people and these things, and in China, but eventually they moved to China.
Yeah, I think it was 1997 when the WTO opened. I think that's when the influx of Hong Kong started moving to China because labor costs cheaper. Um, labor, I mean, mostly labor costs, more land, more opportunity to expand factories. I think that was the thrust, the launch pad when the WTO opened and I remember that was a time where business was 97, 98, 2000s, the dot-com era too as well, when everything started booming. And
Yeah,
after that,
actually, there were a lot of a small type of factories in China at that time, but they didn't have an infrastructure and these things. But there was a lot of parts at that time still was made in China, but there's like few people that knew China, they were doing that.
mhm.
Not everybody was there, but eventually, then China became the factory of the world. I mean, they make all electronics, every electronics now is made
Well, I
in
know
there.
from the times, I think the first trip we had together, he took me, I was just 12, 10, 12 years old. I remember we went to Japan, went to Hong Kong, and I saw, I experienced it firsthand. And then I started traveling with you when I was older, in my early 20s. It's been 20 years been traveling there and see the evolution of China, how it was a farm town. And now it is
Yeah.
a first modern world country of factories, and as well as the Southeast Asian countries as well, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines. But overall, I mean, as the internet, I mean, as one thing, as everything's changed, the internet changed the world, made everything smaller. Information was, I would say, there was a technology revolution from the 90s to 2000s, right? So how in that end did we, as I say, there was a pivot, there was a change. Internet
There
was
was
a
a major
major
change.
change. Everything's available online, the sourcing, communication, email.
Actually, the internet, as far as getting customers, uh, made our job harder because at that time, then a lot of competition come to play.
Yes.
When I started exporting over there, there was like 2 or 3 companies in USA. They were doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even the large companies like Avnet and these
Was
things.
that how back then was it Hamilton? Was it
Hamilton, Avnet.
Avnet? Yeah, all the older.
Yeah, they weren't actually that much in China. And they sold over there, but everybody at that time in USA was afraid to do business with China because they don't know if they get paid or not, and these things. Uh, so wasn't that much business happening. But internet made our job as far as because now everybody knew sources, they could find sources and these things with the internet and these things, and made hardest for us. Competition was bigger.
Yeah, competition grew. The internet brought
Yeah, the
competition because everything
competition
is, yeah.
brought lot of competition. Internet brought to us, so we had to work harder.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's also down to relationships, to have those, keeping those solid relationships that you had throughout the
Yeah, I
years.
mean
Yeah.
the relationship in Asia is number one. While there is a lot of government enforcement of uh, keeping everybody clean and in a purchasing
Yes.
at that
Not
time
under
was
the table. No,
on the
yeah,
table.
under the table things are happening. I mean, as we know, I mean, I think in China was very known for that, but it's everything has evolved. As a third world country, China was as the first world. The things had to evolve and go through those growing pains. So I mean, one thing that also I like to discuss, because one thing that you've always did over the years is you always give a lot of people opportunity, and that's one thing to say is like it's the possibilities. Anything is possible. You just have to try. And that's one thing I always like inspires me too, is you always gave, I mean, I think probably hundreds of people that came through this office, especially this office in California. You hired waiters, you hired people off the street, friends of a friend. You always gave somebody an opportunity.
Yes.
Because I think you always see something in somebody's like, you can do it. Come to their office. I'll give you a job. No problem. Just you work, as you always say, it's how you always say is information and knowledge equals money. This is number one thing is you have to have the information and knowledge equals money. If you do these two things, if you get, knowledge, information, but is getting information equals money. I remember I used to preach that as you hear it in some of the meetings. It's like,
I was always looking for talent. Like one of our friends, which is now very close, is Sasan Tabib, now which he owns very large company.
It's from Chip One Exchange. He's one of the top 50 distributors now. Yeah,
he was working in a restaurant as a waiter, and I just talking to him, and I talked to him, and he said, "Oh, I can speak 5 different languages." I said, "What the hell you doing here? Tomorrow come to my office." So he came here and learned, and then he went to other companies, and he started his own company, and he became a millionaire.
Yeah, he's one of the. They're one of the top 50 distributors in the world. He's Chip One. He did move to Germany, and the whole team have done a great job. It's as you say, that is one of the success because there's many, I think, people that you mentored or brought in that also left, and it wasn't to start competition, started another business in the industry or went to another company, but their foundation or their start, you gave them the chance. So that that speaks a lot of words for the type of person that you are to bring people in to give them a chance. That's the inspiration that everybody looks for, is someone just to get the chance, because you never know. It doesn't matter. You're a waiter, you're on the street, a friend of a friend, or someone needs opportunity. These are things that that builds good leadership and leaders, and that's when you see somebody. And
that's very like you said. I always say, just look for possibilities.
Yeah.
Everything is possible.
Yeah, I always, as I said, I always say the same thing.
You have to be consistent,
and consistency is key. And that's the number one thing that people, especially today's world, have, is keeping consistent. It's that instant dopamine. They want it now, or they want it instantly. And I think from what you grew up, it was tough, challenging. What you went through and the wisdom that you have, it's priceless. And for the generation of my generation's succession of coming through, it's also seeing the hard work and effort you put into there. Yeah, it's big shoes to fill. We have a global business now, and how things have evolved. But that's the question I want to ask you. Bring that back to is the world has changed. Our company has evolved. What really do you see kind of as the future, or something from the past to the future? Have you seen our company itself, its values have evolved as a family business, start as a family. We have 100 people strong around the world, and we're still act as a family. I think that's really what kept our story. But what are some things that you can share with people of the challenges you have, some of the wisdom and the generations that you can share with people out there, people listening to this?
Yeah, this one thing is very important, that one thing I tried. Most of the employees that we have, we kept for a long time.
So the longevity of we have, I think, some people we have a new thing called legends. Last year, as we had our outing, there's a lot of people have been here 20, 25 plus years.
Yeah. And that's a very important thing. So it's important that the employees, they feel like this is
the loyalty in the family, right?
Loyalty in the family, they're part of the family, and we care for them. Of course, there were many people who came and left, but those people, they were lost. But a lot of people, they appreciate that.
But what is it from the leadership standpoint, as yourself? What is it, some of the leadership traits that you think really allowed for them to longevity to stay? What are some of the things you can share with us that you learned to become a better leader, or a better mentor, and inspire not just the people and family and friends and your workers?
I think it's just the thing is to make the employees secure, and they know we care for them. We help all the employees when they get a personal problem, financial problem. We always help them. So that's very important, that people or employees, they establish loyalty to you, and they know that you are loyal to them.
Correct. It's a loyalty. It's a bond. And I think that's something you've passed down as well as myself. it's also challenging. It's because the cultures, we have a lot of, having, I think, 12 different locations of countries, offices around the world is different cultures. And that's something that we adapt. You actually taught me as well as adapting to give opportunity that, we have, Southeast Asia, China is, how do you say these days, not judging a book by its color, the way they look. It's just giving everybody opportunity and, and sometimes don't have the fear. Put it behind you. Don't judge everything. Move forward. There's possibilities are endless. You just have to try, right? And that's really
trusting people.
Yeah.
You trust them and they trust you. This is very important for employees to stay a long time with the company.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And so while we're coming down to this, what are some of your wishes for the company as we go? We're on year 40. This is 40 years. It's unbelievable that we've gone this far. We've been through many 3 or 4 recessions, ups and down, deployment changes, a lot of internal, as a family business, lots of dynamic and the politics that happens with that. What are your goals to see the company in the future? What are some things that you want to see with IBS brand and the global business?
Actually, I always wanted to have an international type of company. And of course, right now in electronics, it changed so much from the old days to now. Because, like I said, at that time, nobody was exporting. Now, like these big companies, Avnet and those big our competition.
The big distribution company, the big tier ones, yeah, the big guys, yeah.
They have offices in every city in China.
Around the world, actually every city in Europe, and yeah, they're everywhere, yeah.
Of course, we never had the capital to do such a thing and get a company so large. But these guys are a public company. They have a lot of money they can spend on these things. But the most important is to keep up with technology. Technology has changed so much. If at that time when I started the company, somebody told me we're gonna have this, that, I wouldn't believe it, but it's happening.
Yeah, everything is controlled with a handheld device, and that's your whole world. You can tell your blood pressure, can tell your bank account, you can pay everything, you communicate around the world. That's really what everything's from just, and it's a mobile device, IoT, all the new things that are happening in the world. It's fascinating what has changed. And also your core, what's funny is full circle is no matter how you look at it, but the power side is still almost the same. Transformer, inductors, chart. They can, that form factor where you started from the beginning has evolved, but it has it still.
Yeah, the power supply is, because everything in electronics device has a power supply in it.
Correct.
That's at one point, like power supplies was priced by watt. Like at one point, each watt was like $10 for one 10-watt power supply. You paid
$100. So that was.
But that price has gone down
Dramatically, yes.
But still, the basic is same because everything is the power, and when you have a power, you need transformers to change the power from AC to DC, and so still the fundamental is the same, but now power supply is becoming a very common item.
And everything needs power. Everything's a charger. It doesn't matter your cell phone, your computer. There needs to be power. No matter how much wireless wearables we wear, it still needs to be charged. And it needs a charger. It needs to have a transformer. It needs to change the power.
And
it needs to plug into a wall.
Has dropped so much per watt. That's incredible. Right now, this plug-in power supply that you use for your phone to charge your phone or any other item is now.
It's pennies, yeah.
And technology on it has changed so much because everything in there in the old times used to have a lamination transformer in there. But actually, it got out of the having a lamination transformer in this type of power supplies.
Yeah, I think they just because they made them more efficient and the better hold power, the efficiency has improved with the technology it's about. But the form factors almost have gone a little bit smaller, but I think the efficiency have improved, that they carry more power.
The concept is the same,
Yeah.
because you still have convert the AC to DC.
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
But that technology from AC to DC and the components that changed that has changed so much.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, Bob, this has been unbelievable. I mean, it's the first father and son thing we've done. And I just want to thank you for your wisdom and what you've done for us. And I think the whole IBS family does. And I hope everybody who's going to watch and listen to this understand, where we really came from, the roots of IBS, the name International Bobbin Systems. These are a lot of fun things, facts about our history. And, we have to tell the story. And, in 40 years, it's a big milestone for us.
Anyway, this is very unique. The first opportunity I had to talk about. I told many friends and this thing, some friends and family, but this is the first time I say this thing in the public. But anyway, thank you for inviting me.
It's our pleasure.
If your audience, they like and they want to know about my more experiences and challenges, send the email or like
the podcast, send the email. We have like the Rob Tavi, the Real Talk. We are on Spotify, iTunes, Google, every platform out there. We were subscribe.
Yeah, if you like it so much and like to ask me questions, then we'll get a live broadcast.
We'll do a live broadcast. You can ask questions, a Q&A. Everybody gets a Q&A for Bob. Bob loves to answer questions. Yeah. Well, thank you, Bob, again.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything. Thank you for inspiration. Thank you for being an amazing father and a leader.
You guys doing a good job.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
And we're out.